welcome to Reddit Aliens. What's the creepiest thing that has ever happened to you during sleep paralysis? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I was in Vegas, laying next to my boyfriend who was asleep. Suddenly, what I could only describe as a skull with a white, tattered sheet attached to it flew from the wall on the opposite side of the room and stopped, hovering over me. It paused there, not quite looking into my eyes, but definitely looking at me. I was entranced in pure fear and had no way to leave the situation. I wasn't even able to close my eyes. Finally, after what felt like 10 minutes but was probably more like 10 seconds, it glided past me and seemed to disappear between the headboard and the wall. I instantly regained my ability to move and sprung out of bed. In a panic, I desperately tried to move the bed away from the wall to see what it was, only to find out that the headboard was bolted to the wall itself. This woke up my boyfriend and our friends in the other bed, all wondering what was going on. I just kept repeating, "It's behind there, it's behind there." I went through a roughly 3-year stint where I would get night terrors or sleep paralysis quite often, and this was the most terrifying experience. I felt a pressure on my chest, like someone climbing on me. I opened my eyes and an effing lion was resting on my chest with its front paws. Staring into my eyes, I try to move, to scream, nothing. My eyes dart around the room in terror. An elderly Indian woman with a headscarf and robes was sitting crouched in the corner of my room, where the beanbag should have been. She smiles peacefully and clicked her fingers. The lion then climbs off me and joins her in the corner. They both just sit and stare into my eyes as I lay there paralyzed. Woke up to voices. I couldn't fully open my eyes, but I could hear people standing over me talking to each other. What should we do with him? Hurry, before he wakes up. Don't worry, he won't wake up. I was finally able to open my eyes enough to see 2 shadow humanoid figures with dog skulls as heads standing at the foot of my bed. The second I tried to scream, they lunged at me and put this insane amount of weight on my chest. I couldn't breathe. I usually can't see faces during sleep paralysis, but I could see theirs. I was eye to eye with one of them. For some reason, I thought that if I went under my covers, the sleep paralysis wouldn't be so bad. Not quite the case. All I could see was darkness, but I could hear murmuring around me. It sounded like the voices of my friends, but whatever they were saying was indistinguishable. Their voices were overlapping, and even though I could only make out a few voices, it sounded like there were thousands of them. It was calm and quiet at first, but the sounds started to swell as they started sounding more and more desperate. The comforter on top of me started to glow orange, softly at first, but it got brighter, in sync with the sounds of the voices growing louder. Once the sound was unbearable, they suddenly stopped, and I was left in silence. After a moment, black silhouettes of hands started beating violently against my comforter, and the voices picked back up again, screaming now. I swear I could feel them hitting me. Another time, my room started flashing red and blue, and I could hear the sound of sirens approaching me. I live right by a prison, so this is anything but uncommon. I kind of just accepted it as being normal until the sirens became so loud it was like they were right outside my room. Then the outline of a hand, I don't know what it is with me and hands, okay, hit the window, followed by the rest of the person's outline. They were screaming, begging to let me in. I don't know why, but I felt like I had to, but, couldn't move. Couldn't even tell them I wanted to help them. There was a beat, and the figure appeared in my room. They were kind of illuminated by the lights, but still all I could see was black and their smile. They slowly walked over to me and loomed over me, and I was pretty positive I was about to die. But then there was another beat, and they were gone, and I could move again. I have a ton more stories, but those 2 experiences were definitely the freakiest and most vivid. I don't know why, but my sleep paralysis gets so vivid and complex. A lot of times it's like I'm not even in my room, but I can feel my bed beneath me. Well, this raises a good question. What's scarier, something that can be seen or something that can't be seen? I was lucid dreaming, and I guess nature caught on and didn't like it. I do it all the time. A dark figure pulled me down. I woke up in my bed looking to the left and felt what seemed like a real hand grabbing my shoulders as I laid on my side, and I looked right to hear voices murmur in my ears and saw a black void in the shape of a human or animal, and then woke up. My girlfriend told me my heart rate on my Fitbit reached like 130 while sleeping, and I could still feel the touch and hear the voices. I had a dream once that we were having a lockdown at school, and as my teacher came into view, my dream had ended and I entered sleep paralysis. Everything in the scene was disappearing and turning into my room except for my teacher. My teacher ended up turning into a shadowy figure, and the shadow just walked away and disappeared, like I caught it watching me. It scared the living shit out of me, and I couldn't sleep for a few hours because of that. When I lived in Austria, I'd get sleep paralysis all the time in my apartment. Don't know why. One time I dreamt that the black shadow figure came into my room and was just casually walking around my room. It had the silhouette of a guy with a trench coat and hat, kind of like Dick Tracy. Walked over to my window, stared out it for a while. In the middle of this, I was trying to scream something to the effect of, "Get the F out of my apartment," but it just came out as defenseless whimpering. Shadow Man heard said whimpering, then slowly turned around, and I felt him facing me and staring at me until I woke up scared shitless. The first time I experienced it was probably the scariest because I didn't quite know what was going on. I was sleeping on my side when I felt a figure behind my back and I heard it walking behind me. I tried to look at it so I could see who was standing behind me, but I couldn't even open my eyes. And all the time I just felt somebody standing and breathing behind my back. That really freaked me out because I just wasn't in control of my body and couldn't do anything about it. After that, I was just afraid to go to sleep because I didn't want this to happen again. Even though I know what was going on, it just feels too real and I always freak out. The last time it happened, it was actually just a few days ago. I felt my mum holding me by my shoulders and talking to me, and as I realized what was going on, the feeling just intensified. At the end, I just wanted to scream and wake up, but I couldn't move a muscle. I eventually woke up and I'm still a bit freaked out about it, just because this has not happened in a while and I really hoped it was over, but I guess it never really ends once it starts happening. I hear my brother talking next to my bed, but I know my door is still closed. Then look over and my sister is face down on the floor and her head is sort of vibrating or shaking. Freaked the F out of me even though I knew it was fake. Still cool every time I have it though. Happens quite a bit to me. Usually involves someone or something in my room with me. Depending on the situation, it takes me a while to realize that nothing was actually there. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment. It never happens when I have my daughter, and she is in the room next to me. Last one, I opened my eyes and some dark female-type figure was right next to me. It then started to contort weirdly and shift behind my headboard of my bed and disappear. The thing is, there is no space between my headboard and wall for anything to get behind. Usually, I will snap out of these after realizing what is happening. It can sometimes take a minute or two. I have hypnopompic hallucinations, so after a really awful bout of sleep paralysis, in which I had this weird humanoid creature lunging at me from the foot of the bed, I woke up to see the creature still there, and it started to fade back into the wall, and it only disappeared when I turned my phone light on it. As someone who's never experienced this phenomenon, and hopefully doesn't, that sounds horrifying, to see the hallucination and feel like you're awake, but then still see it? Oof. I've lived with 2 roommates 3 years ago in a 2-bedroom rented apartment. My room was connected to the big open plan living room and dining room. We had a foster cat who rarely meowed, barely moved around as she mostly slept. She was 5 years old, tortoise-shell kitty. When I moved in with my roommates because of uni, I started experiencing sleep paralysis more frequently. It was a standard every night. Difficulty breathing, can't move, strange noises, and overall weird feelings, but I've always managed to wake up from it and go back to sleep. I was used to it. But one particular night, I've experienced severe sleep paralysis. Nothing similar happened to me before, and after this particular one, the cat was always sleeping in the living room and rarely came to my room to sleep. One night, I headed to bed late after studying. My roommates were already asleep in their room, and I left the cat in the living room. As I was falling asleep, I noticed I was getting sleep paralysis again. I cannot move, I cannot breathe. My body feels heavy, like I'm in a lead cage, and slowly sinking into my bed. I felt something at the end of my bed. Soft steps, like a cat, somehow came in my room and was walking between my feet. I hear odd noises, static-like noises mashed up with mumbling and growling in my ears. And as I was lying on my back, I felt like something heavy, like that same cat who was a second ago walking around my feet on the bed was now lying on my chest, and she was licking her fur so loudly that I heard it like she was licking her fur right next to my ear. It was so disturbing, I started panicking. With every atom of my being, I wanted to wake up and turn the light on and calm myself down so I can go back to sleep later. I knew it's not real, but it felt so real. I didn't know whether I'm dreaming or not. After what felt like hours, I managed to wake up. I jumped up out of bed to check if the cat really was in my room, but she wasn't. I opened the bedroom door and saw her sleeping peacefully on an armchair lit up with moonlight coming out the balcony door. I was so anxious and disturbed that I rang up my boyfriend to tell him what just happened, and he talked to me for an hour until I was brave enough again to go back to sleep. Sleep paralysis is the worst, and when I moved out of that flat and when my boyfriend adopted that same cat, it just stopped. I've never had a sleep paralysis episode after I moved out. I still get goosebumps when I remember what was happening there. The first time I had sleep paralysis that I can remember, I was probably 6 or 7. All I remember is not being able to move. My eyes were not in actuality open, but I thought they were, and darkness was seeping out from the corners of the room towards me. I couldn't move. I couldn't escape, though I was trying everything to wiggle away. As the darkness enveloped me, I felt pure fear, and I remember attempting to scream. My jaw felt like it was glued in place. This is the same way it begins every time. It happened on a nightly basis for a very long time, then slowed down as I got older and more aware of my surroundings. Often I could stop it from settling by debunking the darkness to myself or closing my eyes when I first saw it starting, instead of watching it until it was upon me. At least until I moved out of my mom's shortly after my dad had passed away. Rapidly, instead of just darkness enveloping me, it formed into a creature of some kind. It was purely black, and it had a very wide, Joker-esque kind of mouth full of sharp, perfectly pointed teeth, a wicked Chelsea smile. It seems to have had bad intentions, screaming in my face after I'd tried to close my eyes or had already closed them prior to the rigor setting in, breathing on me with just this look of pure hatred, even taunting me, knowing I couldn't move by moving itself in and out of my vision while smirking at me, before suddenly screaming in my ear or face. It felt like it took an extreme amount of pleasure from my fear and toying with me. After I moved in with my current boyfriend, I haven't experienced SP too often. A few times, here or there. When I first moved in, it was happening nightly, and then it just stopped after this event. I was laying in bed, not even planning to go to sleep, but I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, I was sitting up without trying to, and there was my creature prancing throughout my bedroom. I watched it in awe for what seemed like an eternity, as it did a few laps, jumping on all of my things before it appeared to notice I was paying attention, and it simply turned its head slowly to peer at me before smiling this wide, sinister smile. Again, without feeling as though I was in control, my jaw opened and I screamed. My boyfriend shook me awake, and I went nearly 3 years without another episode until recently. That episode was also really intense, and it's the first I've been unable to recall clearly, aside from knowing I woke up and told my boyfriend it had happened. Truth be told, I have never even heard of sleep paralysis before becoming the narrator for this channel. For those that suffer from this, does it affect your regular sleep? Do you fear it happening every night, or is it just a matter-of-fact thing by now? I have had sleep paralysis almost every night for the past 3 to 4 years. I've gotten used to it and realized I have to remain calm in order not to experience anything too scary. I've also learned to get myself out of an episode by wiggling my toes or fingers, but I have had many horrifying experiences. The worst ones had to be when I wasn't as used to dealing with sleep paralysis and would keep my eyes open. I remember waking up but being unable to move and immediately felt like something bad was going to happen and that someone or something else was in the room with me. I looked above me to see an all-black figure with many long, thin arms clutching the ceiling like a spider. I started freaking out and screaming, though I wasn't actually screaming, and watched as it snapped its head 360 all the way around to face me. The only features I could make out were pure white glowing eyes. All of a sudden, it just dropped onto my chest, and I snapped out of it, freaked the hell out of me, and I shot out of my bed. Definitely could not go to sleep after that. Also, commonly get the sensations that I'm being dragged out of my bed or downstairs or off a couch, but I wake up exactly where I was. Super strange phenomena.